All right, Gavin, it is 9:45. I think we can rock and roll. Thank you, Gavin Farber, for being with us today. I'm going to give a brief introduction to Gavin. Gavin is no stranger to mentoring. In fact, since I've been on board with Nakata, I feel Gavin has been a great mentor to me. And I want to just give a few little pieces of information about Gavin. Gavin has been an academic advisor at Temple University, and he's been there for almost 10 years. He's currently a member of the freshman and sophomore advising team. He served Temple advising community as co-chair of the academic advisor group from 2013 to 2016, and he led the Temple University mentoring program from 2017 to 2020. He has worked to transition into moving into advisor training and development activities on campus. He has a master's degree in higher ed from Rowan University, a master's in human resource management from Temple University. He does a lot with Nakata, and we're very thankful to have him there. He joined Nakata in 2012. He began in Region 2 mentoring program as a mentee and later served as a mentor in 2015 and 2016. He has presented at several Nakata state drive-ins and regional conferences. He is currently, he was elected to the advisor training and development advising community chair in 2018, and he will be serving as a chair right through till the end of October 21. Gavin, welcome to Metro Community College and our advising conference.
Thank you so much, Nina. Thank you for your beautiful, beautiful words. You do a lot of work for advising communities globally now, and you should be really proud of yourself. And I'm so happy to be with Metro today. Hello, everyone. I'm Gavin Farber, and welcome to Advisor Mentoring, offering change, community, and connection during the age of Zooming. As Nina said, I work as an academic advisor at Temple University. We're a large urban institution in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I specifically work with our Fox Center, our Fox School of Business and Management students. I work with only business students, but we are large with over 12 or 13 undergraduate schools and colleges, but a very active advising community of about 120 professionals. So today's session is really going to be focusing on different ways you can seek mentoring during pandemics or non-pandemics, and sort of examples from Nakata of how certain mentoring models have worked in this kind of environment and kind of allowed us to thrive. And also kind of, if you're not kind of looking for formal mentoring, we'll also discuss a little bit about informal mentoring opportunities that you could find if you're just seeking a person to be your mentor. So we'll do a little bit of a brief history of mentoring. We'll talk about mentoring and academic advising, why mentoring is so important, both the challenges and benefits that mentoring can give you, review some of the virtual programming models, talk a little bit about how to build effective relationships, finding a mentor, and then we'll do some wrap up with any questions and answers. So mentoring during a pandemic. So what we found, especially in my experiences over the last, 17 months or so, is that the mentoring programs I helped run didn't stop because of a pandemic. If anything, it offered us new ways to be more creative, because although you can't physically meet up with a mentor for coffee, it was now Zoom coffees, it was now Zoom lunch chats, it was now happy hours, it was now doing training and development virtually, and it really allowed us to continue the importance of our professional development as academic advisors, as higher educators. And again, we weren't going to let this pandemic stop us. If we think about the history of mentoring, it does date back to ancient Greece. And Homer's The Odyssey, there was a whole story about Odysseus, who was the king of the Ithaca. He goes to fight the Trojan War, and he has a son named, he has a son that is now left in the care of the son's name is Telemetheus, and then he's sort of left in the care of Mentor, and basically Mentor and also Athena in that story kind of take on kind of the mentoring guidance of Telemetheus, because his father's away fighting the Trojan War, and sort of this whole centuries and now, thousands of years journeys of mentoring is now sort of taking effect in our, world today. So mentoring in higher education and kind of advising. So mentoring is really important because we think about it's about building community. So it might be between advisors in different academic units, different offices, different schools or colleges, different institutions, globally, connecting different people from around the world in different countries to what different models you might have. It's about sort of engaging advising talent as well, because again, although we're here for student success, our practitioner success is just as important. If we're not successful, if we're not able to find ways to engage and retain in the industry, we're going to be leaving, and then the students are not going to be as successful because we're losing those ties to the student and us. I also think mentoring helps sort of our mid-level and senior level practitioners give their expertise and share their knowledge with newer practitioners, offering words of wisdom, sharing that notion of if you don't mentor, the cycle is going to stop. We have to continually to pass batons. And also, I think it transforms our career outlooks on all levels. Whether you're a graduate student, a new practitioner within the first 3 years, you're kind of stagnant in your role. I'm getting that tenure mark, and so we're getting a little antsy. What do I want to do next? How can I figure out what my role is? How am I going to transform my role? Ways that COVID has kind of transformed our jobs right now. We're all gaining new skill sets, and how that may help us to create new outlooks and to find success. There are a couple of examples of functions of mentoring from Cram, whose study in 1983 included sort of in-depth interviews with managers. And we kind of look at 3 different functions. So there are sort of career-related functions, which might provide sponsorship, exposure, visibility, coaching, protection, and sort of challenges. Career-related functions might depend upon a mentor's organizational rank, their tenure, their experience. So sometimes in more formalized programs, we might find that when we have a pool of candidates for both mentor and mentee roles, we may find, okay, maybe the senior vice president might be placed with a manager looking to rise up. Maybe it's a person that really is about wanting to provide sponsorship to a newer practitioner to help them grow in an organization. So it's very, very interesting how that career-related function kind of work out. A psychosocial function kind of goes out in later functions where it's about role modeling, acceptance, confirmation, counseling, and friendship. Again, not all mentorships are going to end up in friendship, but again, it's sort of that, what do we do at the end of that relationship? If it's a formalized process, if it's informal, how do you view this person? About developing that intimacy, that trust involved that's kind of needed in a mentoring relationship. And then finally, sort of role modeling, which is really, it's about behaviors that are centering around the role of your personal and professional exemplar. It's a balance between your personal and professional development, sort of those indispensable skills that you would be earning from that mentorship. Some of the challenges that we see with mentoring and kind of common themes we see is sort of providing an adequate direction. A lot of the times when I've been running mentoring programs at the university, it's, making sure we tell mentors, like, you're not this person's supervisor. You're not to give them, they could talk to you about a situation with their boss, but at the end of the day, the mentee has a boss that they report to. They have certain objectives they have to follow. So you want to make sure that the direction you're giving them is positive, but not going to give them a 180. Taking advantage of greater power sometimes. Sometimes, a mentee might go rogue and they might kind of utilize both powers, conflicting demands, dealing with kind of conflicting advice, a lack of commitment. You might have a mismatch going on where in the first couple months you might get 1 or 2 correspondences, and then after month 3, 4, you don't hear anything, and then it's just neglect sometimes that goes on. Miscrossing boundaries, mismatches, and like confidentiality is a big thing with when I train mentors and mentees. It's about, what you share together. You want to make sure, is this something I can share? Is this something I need to keep in the vault? And you have to also kind of think, like, if you are seeking to be a mentor or a mentee, are you willing to kind of share sometimes private things about yourself if it's within your job and you need like a confidant to kind of talk to about some situations that might be going on. Challenges that some mentors might face is that they might be opposed to mentoring. because they've never taken part in a formal mentoring process. And, if someone's never experienced something, that might create a career block for them. Sometimes you have senior management that might resist, um, being interested in sort of being involved in people development, personal development. Another challenge is sometimes they offer too much advice or direction. That kind of, like I said earlier, in lines that kind of affect someone's relationship with a supervisor. Challenges that sort of, mentees face is sometimes you have a skeptical mentee because they don't trust senior managers. They've had situations with other senior leadership sometimes where they don't respect their, competence. Mentoring is definitely a two-way street. So, as Beyonce says, always 50-50 in relationships. Again, there's going to be days in mentorships where you might be giving 10%, they might be giving 90. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that someone's not being taken advantage of, that everyone's sort of equal in it, making sure that there is, commitment on both sides. Sometimes the lack of commitment is affecting the mentee's development. Like I said, demands and advice. Johnson's probably one of my favorite scholars on mentorship. He works at the Naval Academy in Annapolis. And so he's written these great books about sort of faculty mentoring, and that can kind of do very well with advising and sort of student affairs and such. But he sort of says that mentors can gain, not only personal satisfaction and personal fulfillment, but this notion of creative synergy and like professional rejuvenation. Like I said earlier, we get a little stagnant in our roles. We get used to sort of the day in, day out. Synergy and creativity with mentoring allows you to kind of think about like, okay, I did this situation years ago, but how would I reapproach it? When you hear new ideas from a mentee, sometimes they're reinvigorating your emotion of, oh, that's how you utilize that program, or oh, that program might work really well with my students. So it's about a sharedness of ideas, that notion of networking, motivation to remain current.
Are you guys still just doing like mail-in?
And, friendship and support, and obviously, the reputation for kind of talent development, what we would call. When we think about the benefits for a mentee, coming from perspectives of, maybe it's a graduate student, their academic performance might become better. They become more productive, professional skill development, networking, obviously. Sometimes with graduate students and new professionals, it might help with initial employment. It might be, pairing up new professionals getting out of their graduate programs, seeking jobs in academic advising. The mentor might be able to, connect them with other people. I always tell people who are in mentoring relationships, don't expect a job. But, if you are seeking kind of advice for job and kind of changement and employment and things like that, it's not a guarantee, but at least put it out there. Career eminence is a big thing. Obviously, mentees are going to have reduced stress and lack of role conflict, which is good because they're able to talk to somebody and like get their thoughts out. And I think overall with their program and institution overall. So virtual mentoring program. So NACADA has a lot of different mentoring programs and models. One is called the Emerging Leaders Program. I've never gone through this program personally, but this was kind of an initiative through the Diversity Committee back in 2016. And what they do is every year they select 10 emerging leaders and they pair them with 10 mentors. And it's a 2-year program where basically leaders are matched with mentors that have a range of different leadership experiences in NACADA. And the goal of that program is sort of to help those practitioners who are really interested in getting involved in NACADA leadership. The NACADA regional programs that are currently in 7 of the 10 regions don't necessarily focus on sort of leadership, but it's rather, engaging with practitioners within the field. Even within our advising communities, we see like the business majors advising community and advisor training development both have their own mentoring programs now to kind of help professionals seeking advice from professionals in those particular areas of academia, academic advising, etc. So about 4.5 years ago in Region 2, we created the hashtag No Mentee Left Behind campaign in that Region 2 because although we're the Mid-Atlantic region and it looks densely, we don't have a lot of land, but we're very populated. And so we had this formal mentoring program created back in 2012. When I took over in 2018, we had this issue of not being able to match every mentee mentee applicant because of a lack of mentors. So that campaign was sort of like, we need to make sure we have an equal number of mentors and mentees. We don't want to ever like say no to a mentee applicant. We want to make sure that, you know, everyone that applies gets in. And for that reason, we thought, okay, no mentee left behind. It'll get a lot of information. So what it did was it actually did help us gain more practitioners into the field. And it actually allowed us over the last couple of years to sort of create, you know, in 2018, we had 25 pairs. In 2019, we had 20 pairs. And in 2020, through the pandemic, we had 17 pairs. So again, it's definitely that notion of, in this virtual setting, you know, rather than being at a physical conference, having a more formalized meet and greet, we did a reception over Zoom. You know, we, you know, encourage those pairs to have those monthly checkpoints. We actually do various checkpoints throughout the year. We'll do different Zoom chats with mentors and mentees, sometimes separately, sometimes together. And we're also trying to think about ways to do chats on maybe TED Talks. Maybe it's giving a group of advisors a scholarly journal article. Or maybe it's even bringing in experts from the association to talk more about the role of academic advising. This past year in 2021, Region 2 paired out themselves up with Region 1. It was because of the way the regional virtual conferences worked. We decided to collaborate with Region 1 for the first ever dual mentoring program with 2 different regions. We had a record number of participants. We have 90 professionals in the program, so 45 pairs. So it was very daunting to put them all together, but again, it was great to see that through the pandemic, we had record numbers of practitioners still saying, I need mentoring. And so because of that, we decided to do a more robust engagement programming module. This past June, we did a NACADA 101 presentation. In August, we hope to have the professionalization of academic advising chat. Dr. Craig McGill from Kansas State, he's a lecturer there, and he's an expert on the professionalization of academic advising. So he's a great lecturer, and then he does a lot of guest chats with different regions. We might do in the fall a discussion on how to do research in academic advising. One of our mentors at Rutgers University, she's on the research committee for NACADA, and also just do different panels of just leadership to give this cohort kind of specifically special engagement opportunities. And I often say, like, you want to make sure that you're using talent properly in your cohort. So think about sort of, you know, mentors and mentees that might have an expertise area. You know, maybe they're experts in student affairs collaboration. Maybe they are experts in how to teach freshman seminar. Maybe they are someone that works specifically with minors or graduate students or online populations. Or, you know, maybe they're advising administrators. You want to have a meeting of just the administrators in that cohort to make sure they're getting together too. So another fun part about what we've been able to do through NACADA is bring mentoring kind of to the global stage. So about 2 years ago, I started working with an American working in Melbourne, Australia, named Suzanne Seeley. She's been in higher ed for almost 20 years, and she was working at a particular institution in Melbourne, and we started working with her group of advisors because they were a newly formed advising unit. Australia doesn't really have advising per se, it's more faculty based, I would say. And so professional advising models are new for certain parts of the world. And so she was working with a lot of people in NACADA to help kind of bring forth training and development programming. So what we agreed upon was a mentoring program with 5 mentees from her institution in Australia, and we found 5 mentors from 5 different countries. And what we did was we reached out to different contacts in different advising associations from around the world. So our contact in Belgium and the Netherlands came from the Dutch National Advising Association called LVSA. Our UK contact came from someone from UCAT, and our Qatar and US were just NACADA members. We did one virtual meeting with this group, and there was a lot of wonderful kind of global discussions on advising and practitioner-based type stuff. This past April, we started a second cohort, and we were able to include more practitioners in this, we were able to open it up to more mentees from more than just one institution, but we actually found mentees from 5 different countries. And we sort of just put the word out through just Facebook, through different advising communities like the Canadian advising community, and sort of working with different professionals around the world. We were able to kind of hone in on, okay, we had 48 people sign up. We actually had about 13 extra mentors sign up from the UK and Canada, California even. And so we had to try to figure out like, how are we going to move this around? What's the minutia going to look like? We have done the formal pairings. We just want to do an actual virtual meeting. Ideally, because you're dealing with 24 hours of time zone, you're probably going to have to host 2 different chats, one for sort of the folks in Australia and Asia and the Middle East, and then probably one for the North American and sort of European based professionals. So that's something we're looking forward to doing in probably the next month or so. So effective mentoring relationships. So I often tell professionals that the things you want to look for are obviously value. Value meaning time value, practitioner value. How is this mentorship going to add value to yourself, to them, and what are you sharing, and how are you going to share that connection and providing kind of positive direction. Privacy and confidentiality is kind of the most important thing to me when it comes to training new mentors and mentees and sort of sharing the importance of like, what's the line in the sand, trust and caring. And my other big thing is that proteges and mentees should not always depend upon the mentor. I often tell mentees that like, you're kind of guiding the mentorship, because at the end of the day, you're telling the mentor what you want out of the experience. So those are just things to kind of keep in mind. As I mentioned earlier, the importance of sort of equal partnership and goal setting. Goal setting is important. So some mentoring programs I've seen, they've done formalized like SMART goals. I don't necessarily do that with some of the programs I help run, but goal setting is certainly an important part of it. If it's a formalized one-year program, maybe having one goal might be super helpful for that pair to work through over the time that they are together. And finally, just fun and humor. This is an opportunity to kind of take time out of your work day. It might be the one, fun meeting you plan for the week. It might be something on your calendar every 4 to 5 weeks that you have on your calendar for 45 minutes to an hour. And it's a way to kind of give back to the community as well. So the importance of finding a mentor. So again, if you're not in the market right now to find a formalized mentoring program, you might want to find someone informally. So informal mentoring is probably more popular than what we find formal mentoring, because again, mentors are all around us in the world of academic advising. And so what I often tell people who are just starting this search is to email a professional that you really admire and ask them to come to like a virtual meeting. Maybe it's a chat on the phone, maybe it's meeting them for lunch, or maybe it's just sort of just setting up that first email and just doing an email correspondence. And I often tell, mentees to say, give them 3 reasons why you want to seek their mentorship. Because again, prospective mentors may not believe in themselves that they might be able to be good at giving advice. I've had a lot of conversations over the years with professionals that would make amazing mentors, but they just don't believe in themselves. So it's having, a negotiation sometimes of saying, well, Joy, you've done this, and this. This is great information that you could share with practitioner A. You'd be great at it. And so that person I'm just mentioning is my colleague at Temple. We got her into a mentoring program, and now she's just thriving as being a mentor right now. And again, it's about validation on both sides. And it's also sort of when you're finding a mentor, you have to prepare yourself sometimes for not the possible rejection, but someone might also say like, I don't know if I have time to do this. So I always tell people to have a backup of a backup at times as well. So I got done a little bit quicker than I expected, but I mean, right now, is there any like questions, concerns, or how is there mentoring kind of on your campuses, I wonder?
There is hi Gavin, I think there is a question in the chat here. Have you heard of any instances where supervisors used input from mentors to write annual performance reports?
That's a great question. I've not come across that, but I will say that when we're dealing with sort of more institutional based programs, like Temple has an advisor mentoring program, we often will tell mentors and mentees to put that they're a part of the program on their professional plan for the year. So their supervisors do know that they're doing that. So it might be part of the discussion in that, 6 month and year-long checkup. But like that's how I would say it could be incorporated to it. But for example, like my boss was always asking me questions when I put that on my yearly report about like how that has helped my growth, how has it helped me transform how I'm doing like work in my actual job itself, and then sort of the fun extracurricular, what I call it, of the mentoring and things like that. So I don't necessarily have ever had someone ask me to write kind of formal reports or anything like that, but I will say though, I did have a mentor once. I had an email. I had to write a letter for someone's HR office in Japan of why he was a member of it and like how they'd approve him to be a part of it. So that was the only kind of out there thing I had to ever do to kind of write for someone to get credit for it. But certainly a good question to have.
Yeah,
Again,
Gavin, there's another question too. If they want to start a mentoring program at their college, what advice would you give? Like, what are the nuts and bolts they would have to have?
oh, sure. So I often tell people who are just starting to think about forming a program is to get administrative buy-in. You might have to talk to your director of advising. Maybe it's someone in your, provost level office or whoever kind of runs all of advising, and you might have to run a formal proposal with them. I know that with our program at Temple, we had to go through 2 loops. So we had to go through not only the advisor directors council at Temple, but we had to get approval from our provost office and the undergraduate studies office. And the person who started that program actually had the support of a high up dean in one of our colleges. And she sort of was a big NACADA enthusiast as well. So we were able to get the buy-in that way. And also if you're starting small, you may want to start with like a small cohort of like 5 mentors and 5 mentees. So it's only 10 people you're managing. Maybe it's a group of 8 people, maybe it's small. And also for those meetings, you also may want to start doing like informal surveying of like your advising community and see if mentoring is something people are seeking. So that way, when you have that statistical data, you can go to your administrative heads or your central leadership to say, hey, we polled all the advisors and this percentage say they would love a mentor from our community and this percentage wants this. So I always say that at dollars and cents, like obviously these programs are inexpensive to run because I run them for free. But if you were trying to do something more formalized of getting speakers to come in there or host lunches or things like that, that's where you might have to get money for it. But it always starts with little baby steps. So I would say if you get a little coalition of advisors together, do your research, get the analytics there, set your meetings with the proper people, and then say, hey, this is what we're doing. And then also, contacting like someone like myself who's at another institution, we can give you ideas of what we did. It might also be able to work on your campuses. So it's definitely a detailed approach, but I'm definitely a person that, I always have to have the facts to back up the claim, just like what we
Right.
do with students.
There's another question that's come in. What advice do you have for someone that has been advising for 5+ years, but is looking for a mentor and wants to be a mentee?
That's a great idea. I think we actually pair a lot of mid-level professionals as mentees. I think it's important that if you're mid-level, you try to identify someone that might be in a position that you might be interested in doing. So if right now you're mid-level, you're thinking about becoming an assistant associate director of advising, maybe it's you see someone that's a dean of advising. It's someone that you see in a role that you might see yourself doing one day, and they actually might have the skills and might be able to offer you the sponsorship you might need to get into that next role. I think it's absolutely, there's nothing wrong with it. I actually encourage a lot of mid-level professionals to seek mentors, not necessarily become the mentor. I I actually had an interesting conversation with a colleague of mine who originally applied for one of our programs for a mentor. And as we were talking, I said, you should really be a mentee, not a mentor, because although you have great knowledge, you're really focusing on other goals right now. So I think we need actually more of our mid-level practitioners to seek mentoring, because again, if we're not learning from the top dog people, how are we going to inspire the new professionals below us? It's that whole idea of that baton passing. Although I do a lot of mentoring of others myself, I still seek mentoring to this day. I don't know everything. I just sort of have ideas and experiences, and sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. Yeah, mid-levels we're sort of I joke, we're sort of the Jan Brady's of higher education. We're sort of we're the middle children, and we have to always
Fight for attention.
Yes, thanks for the attention.
Yeah. Gavin, there's another question here. So what if you're in a toxic situation where there is no real movement? So you are stuck in a same level position, and you've had several mentors. The organizational culture as such does not promote within the ranks, or so, what is the ultimate goal? I think the question is of mentorship. Is it promotion, or is it just kind of moving around in that and getting some kind of support?
I think first and foremost, it's about support and professional development. I never went into mentoring thinking I was going to get promoted or get into a higher level. It might be another positive of it, but I always believe it's first and foremost, it's the ethic of care of the professional themselves. We actually have a lot of different mentees that have come through, and even mentors that are in toxic work environments. And I always encourage to find someone outside of that environment to seek mentorship with, because it's going to do wonders for your mental health. And also it's someone that you could seek out from outside the office, the organization, etc. Now, the other issues that we're hearing is that we're in smaller offices. There's no advising ladders. There's nowhere to move. There's nowhere to grow. And that's where I sort of talk to people about like that horizontal development, that sort of idea of like, what skill sets could I add to my role that would give me added experiences that might transition to a different role down the line. So for example, someone who might have an interest in career advisement might start working with the career center on your campus, or the professional development center, or might start teaching a class. That might open the door to maybe moving into a different niche area of higher ed, or it might open the door to a different institution altogether. What's interesting about like organizations and associations like NACADA is that there's so many different models of advising out there in the faculty and the professional world that, just in, where I kind of work in Philadelphia, it's like we have very formalized professional development programs. We have very formalized professional models of advising, and then there's faculty advising, and then there's other places that are very small and where things are just stagnant. I've been stagnant before. I've considered in my own role, like moving into a different role or leaving the job, or, and it's sort of that reinvigoration that you sometimes have to see yourself as. I've had to learn, even though I can't stand Taylor Swift, she says, shake it up. Sometimes you got to shake it up. And
Right.
And I've had to shake it up a bit and change an outlook, or, think of the role of itself. When I started, I was obsessed with title. And then after about, 3 or 4 years of being obsessed with a title, I just sort of had to think about what am I doing in my job, and, what am I best doing for my student, and if I'm doing that job well.
That's great. Just one more question that came in, and please feel free to use the chat to post any questions to Gavin. He has a lot of experience mentoring and being a mentee, so I think it's great to pick his brain a little bit here. One of the questions that came in, Gavin, is, are you seeing a lot of burnout affecting this mentorship program, especially recently with the pandemic?
Burnout, I think, has been seen all across. I think if anything, the mentoring programs we've been trying to reinvigorate with mentoring, I think what we're seeing is burnt out professionals are coming into the program seeking help to sort of find a solution. I'm not going to say mentoring is going to save someone's career, but I think being in a group setting of like-minded individuals that are similar to you in your role, it does wonders for people. I think sometimes having that new relationship or having that new partnership and having that, you know, every month check-in, or maybe it's every 2 weeks you're checking in, or maybe it's a friendly email where that mentee is just sending you a meme, something funny on Facebook that you're seeing, it does all the wonders. But I think burnout is chronic. I think that we don't address burnout a lot. I think because of COVID, in my almost 10-year career at my institution, my boss for the first time had actually addressed burnout when the pandemic started. And we had lost a lot of employees and a lot of advisors in my office over the last, 10 years because of burnout, and no one ever addressed it. Nobody talked about it. And I think if anything, COVID has sort of shifted the discussions of, we do need to talk about mental health. We do need to talk about well-being. I mean, NACADA has this amazing well-being and advisor retention advising community now that my friends Jake and Casey help run. And they're, the last year and a half, they've been doing so many amazing just programs and discussions, and it's heartbreaking to hear, what's going on, but at the same time, giving the vehicle for professionals to come in, talk about what's going on, it does wonders for their psyche as well. So we're not quite their therapists, but
You're their friend, right?
it's your acquaintance, your colleague, your bro, your pal, your sister. That idea of that family type feel.
Are there any other questions for Gavin? Try to put it in the chat. How would you know, Gavin, if you are ready to be a mentor?
That's a great question, Nina. I think it's honestly a number of factors. So it's sort of, we often will say like maybe 2 or 3 years in the industry you've been around the block a couple of years, your policy, your experiences. I've had some people jump too soon into mentoring, just to sometimes prove a point. I think it's really about confidence in yourself. Like, I didn't start mentoring people until my 4th year in the industry. Even though someone told me I was ready at year 3, I wasn't quite ready because I was unsure of myself. I think it's sort of this notion of, what have your experiences been? What have you learned as an advisor or as a higher educator? And, think to yourself, do I have something to say? Do I have something to share? And sometimes, it's pairing a 3rd or 4th year professional with graduate students. Like, that's a great way to start the conversation, because again, it's someone really brand new into the industry and really someone new. But it's sort of this checklist in your head of like, okay, do I know my job? Do I have the time commitment? Do I have, do I feel like I could take on another professional and like help guide them, just like how I guide my students? It's sort of an internal thing you got to feel. Sometimes we have people signing up and they just sign up just to sign up. But we also try to do like events before programs start, so people who are thinking about doing it can talk to professionals who have done the program. They can talk to myself and other coordinators to get any questions asked.
Gavin, there's another question. So they're asking, besides leadership buy-in, what other suggestions do you have to implement an advisor mentoring program at a university that is very decentralized, and each college in the institution operates differently and views advisors differently? That's a great question, Raphael.
That's a great question. I would first suggest creating an advisor network of all the advisors on your campus, because I'm actually on a very decentralized campus as well, with different operational areas and such. And what we created back about 15 or 16 years ago was like a central advising group. where it might have been every month you get the advisors together and they can just network with one another. And through that vessel, we created the mentoring program. I would think that if you get buy-in for advisors wanting to get together and collaborate and talk, that's your first point. And I think central leadership, I mean, you never know, it matters on the leadership. May not want people to talk, but in highly siloed environments like where we work, the more collaboration we get, the better, just because, you might be on a highly decentralized university, but you might have a student trying to change majors from your school to my school. And if I don't know advisor A in that school, it's going to make for a much harder transition for that student. So I think there's ways to kind of sell the notion of advisor development programs, advisor groups. And if you actually get them, you can even do them formally through NACADA, through an allied membership. And they're great. I mean, they're on a lot of different campuses, and it's also a good way for advisors just to know one another, to collaborate with each other. And, you could start with a budget of nothing. If you're just sort of getting a room rental, or if you're doing a Zoom chat like this, it's just giving out a link and, inviting people to come for a 1-hour meeting. Obviously, summers are tough because of orientations, but it might be something you start up after Labor Day and after sort of your ad drop period's done. But again, I would say do informal, surveying.
There's another question as well, Gavin. Sorry, were you going to say something? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
David asks, do mentors have a role to play in offering advisement, office leadership, constructive feedback that the mentees may not be comfortable sharing? Good question.
That's a great question. Certainly, I kind of love when a mentor and mentee will discuss sort of advising cases. I used to do that with one of my first mentors at Temple, and I would bring a difficult case to her and say, like, how would you help solve this? And she would say, well, what would you do? And I would say, well, this is what I would do. She said, oh, great idea. Well, have you thought about this? It's not necessarily like pairs within a certain office. Like sometimes you might see mentors within a certain office themselves. But sometimes you'll need that outside perspective to kind of give you that clarity sometimes. I certainly follow a rule that I would never pair like 2 business advisors together, or 2 advisors from the same institution together if it's a regional program. But certainly if it's a more internal type of program to an institution, yeah, absolutely. I think mentors are great for the mentees to chat with about the daily operations of their jobs. And, it's also how you learn how different practices are run, how they interpret different policies.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, Gavin, what I'm hearing really is, a lot of great points that you're giving here. So it looks like some of the challenges is, one could be motivation, like really motivating these programs to start. And then, setting some kind of straight goals as to what you want to achieve through that relationship. The matching seems to be a big question as to make sure you're matching the correct. And I think a lot of planning goes into that. And then getting feedback and ongoing support. My question here is, with the caseloads we have, especially thinking at our college, and I don't know if Julie and Melissa here as advisors can step in and share, but I know the struggle is, just even getting a breathing space to be able to even have this conference, right? How do we, that whole scheduling, and how do you schedule in or work in mentorship through the year or that program, keeping in mind that, we have caseloads, I think right now touching 300 per advisor at our campus. And we wear many hats, right? As Melissa says, making time is a challenge on a quarter system. How can we do that? Like we have 10 to 11 weeks, Gavin, and really even I'm the training and assessment coordinator here, and even just trying to get in, a training session is incredibly difficult because we are a decentralized leadership model. We also have several different campuses. How do you arrange that?
So I often kind of do the whole, for some of the models that we might say is I always kind of give the 1 hour a month, 12 months a year, sort of that, it's almost like the advisor mentoring reserves type of thing. Like we always say, like, if you can give an hour a month, great. If you can't, you can always adjust it. Maybe it's an hour every 6 to 7 weeks and you have 5 meetings, not 12 meetings with that person. Or maybe it's doing more email chatting, or maybe it's more check-ins on LinkedIn or something like that. So there's ways that you can kind of incorporate mentoring that might not be like a formal Zoom discussion, but I know a lot of my mentors in like Australia, for example, they were doing a lot of email chatting with their mentors and mentees, where if they had like a quick second, they would just send a question and then they would get an answer back. I think also, like, with the programs themselves, when we actually do the matching, we go over the year schedule and the training. And I often say, like, it doesn't have to be this exact day you meet with your person, but in the month of May, you might want to try and set up a meeting with your mentor, or, hey, we're going to try and do a program in this month. If you can't come, that's okay. We're going to tape it. We're going to send it out. So it's always just in the Zoom world, like making everything as accessible as possible. Like if you can't go to a training, we're taping it, we'll send it out. And I also I don't believe in like reprimanding people that can't come to meetings, or, as long as you're making an attempt and you're trying to get in contact with someone and you're meeting at least a couple times in that year, know that, like, meeting with someone on both ends, you're doing a nice service to that person. Any time you give to someone else, that's personal time from yourself. In this world of, burnout and large caseloads, it's hard to give up that hour to somebody else. And I think that's something that we're also getting sometimes some kickback on. One thing I really struggle with at my institution, and I no longer run that mentoring program, but I could never get advising directors to mentor. They always said I have no time. So it would always be the pool of like the 90 some odd advisors just mentoring one another, but never really administrators doing it. And that was a missing link. And I almost had said to my boss one thing, I kind of want to go to your director's council and have a discussion with someone there and say, why can't we mentor? And that's the one thing I kick myself for not doing.
Yeah.
We face a big issue, but we try to make it as easy as possible to do it.
Yeah, that's really that's really interesting. I mean, there's some really good takeaways here. I'm just kind of also mulling over how we could incorporate it in, and it's quite a challenge sometimes. I don't know if there are other colleges on here, and if you have a mentoring program that's working, if you want to drop that in the chat and kind of share with us how it's successful on your campus. We're a community college, and we struggle a little bit with this as well. And if you want to unmute as well, you can. If you want to raise your hand and unmute to say something. I know Julie has served at Texas A&M. Julie, are you available? You want to put a question in the chat, or you want to, unmute?
Hey, Nina, can you repeat the question?
So I was asking, I was just saying to Gavin that we're at community college and we struggle just kind of meeting on a regular basis with just training needs. And I know you come from Texas A&M. Did you have a mentoring program at that place? And did you find success with that, or was that a struggle too?
So I didn't work directly with a peer mentoring or even, advising mentoring program. I worked in the area of academic success, but one thing that I kind of spearheaded was with our academic coaches, every week we would do a coaches training, and being able to set that time aside to do different activities. We would have guest speakers. We would even do fun stuff, like we went paintballing once, which was pretty cool. We did bowling. We would carve pumpkins, and just to have that time every week to come together and discuss, and really just putting it on our calendars and making sure that we didn't book anything in that time slot was really important. The biggest thing too was having the support of our director and our executive director. So the fact that they were supporting and approving this time that we set aside, as well as we received a small budget to be able to do some of these activities. Really, that was huge. I think that if we didn't have that, it would have been a lot more difficult.
Right. Thank you, Julie. So budget, Gavin, seems to be, did you start with a budget, Gavin, or no?
No, I've never really had a budget. So for example, the Temple mentoring program, we never had a budget. We had a donated fund for like a luncheon that we did, like the first or second cohort we did back in like 2012, 2013. But after that, it was just sort of a, there was no budget. We just sort of did the matching. We trained and we just said, all right, on your way. With the NACADA Region 2 program, there was a formalized budget when we were meeting in person, just to buy food and stuff for like the meetup. So what we actually were finding was that you couldn't really you couldn't really host in a hotel because the food prices are so expensive that we would sort of take our cohorts and go to a little restaurant right outside the hotel and, ask for like a little table, rope it off and, get hors d'oeuvres and things like that and just pass it around. So, but really, I mean, the budgets itself, I mean, now in a COVID world, there are no budgets. Like the international program, we have no budget. It's just really finding the kindness in different people to give up their time and to, be paired and matched and filling out the applications and matching them and, and doing the science of it all. I mean, if I had a budget, that would be phenomenal. Like it would be great to give swag out to people. I mean,
Right.
The one thing that Region 2 let me do, and I think they have to give me the money for it, but we got these pins created for them. So we have Region 2 pins for mentor and mentee. So for the 2022 regional that we have, I'm actually going to be able to physically give out these pins. I ordered them in 2020. The pandemic happened. Thank goodness we didn't put a date on the pins. So now we just have these pins.
So you can hand them out.
We can hand them out. And it could even be for like the alumni that did it. Like, hey, like at the sign-in or something, I'll be like, hey, were you ever a mentor? Here's your button, put it on your swag and just give them out. And they're bright colors. And so people will know that you did it. And it's buttons. Like who doesn't want something free and like colorful? But I mean, it would be awesome to get like great swag like that. And I think when I took over the program as well, I started doing these like, I bought a laminator, Amazon freak. I literally would make mentor mentee cards and I would laminate them. So every mentor and mentee would come back with like something tangible. So we had a conference in Atlantic City, so it was a Monopoly theme. So like the Park Place and Boardwalk were together. So like those mentors and mentees had basically on the back of their card, like the name of the mentor, their email, their personal information, and it was all laminated. So it was like something fun they could take back to work with them. So
that sounds really fun. Yeah.
I mean, you got to be crafty. Like you don't have to be like I'm not a crafty person, but $20 for a laminator, and it's so much happiness with a laminator.
Yeah, we have Deanna who says we have one at UNC Charlotte that is part of a larger advising group. We have had a lot of success with our program. We require mentors to go through a training once a summer for the following academic year. We always give mentors the option of saying that they are too busy for that semester. We only do the formal, sorry, my slider there is not moving very well.
Sorry, I could talk about it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Our program, I actually just came from our training, which is kind of funny. But we've had a lot of success with our program and we do not have money. So, and what we do is we require individuals that are interested in being mentors to be trained once a year in the summer. And we give them a few opportunities to do that. And then they're trained for the upcoming academic year. And then we do kind of, our learning management system is Canvas. And so we do a lot of things in Canvas so that, whenever they have time, they could kind of follow some of the recommendations. So we have templates that mentors could push out to mentees during specific times of year. We also do the laminated sheets. Gavin, you had me laughing. We do the same thing, and our advisors put them on their doors so that other people could see that they're a trained mentor in our program. So
I like that.
Kind of like a little bit of pride. But we have people that cycle in and cycle out depending on what's going on. And we say that that's fine. We're comfortable with that. We would rather somebody say that they're too busy versus a mentee having a bad experience. So
yeah. Thank you, Deanna.
Thank you so much, Gavin.
You're
Appreciate you all. This is wonderful.
Thank you.
And I'll be honest, mentor mismatching is tough. I mean, I've had to rematch people in the middle of a program and it gets really awkward. Like when someone needs to be rematched and it's like the drama of that. And it's not dramatic. It's just, like I joke, like we in our regional program rematched someone in like 6 hours. Because we were like, my mentor, my region chair and I were hustling. We were like, who can we get to mentor this person from this state, from this area?
Right.
And it's just reading like NACADA membership list and just like zoning in on people and highlighting it and searching and,
that's awesome. That's awesome, Gavin, that you do that for the advising community.
Well, I mean, I kind of think in this age of Zooming now, I could have gone, as professionals, we could have gone various directions, For me, working on these programs helped me kind of get through this pandemic, but kept me busy. It kept me off of the craziness of work. It helped me worry not what's going on outside the house and what was going on in the world. And I think really professional development since the beginning, I think of a lot of our careers has kind of been there as like an anchor to kind of keep us engaged and kind of with it. We're all human. We all have good days and bad days. And honestly, the work like we get to do together, especially with our, advising community, that's been a lot of work too, like a lot of great conversations and just meeting with people. And you might have seen a person in person in 2019 or something, and just doing this, we're connecting with the world and it's just a Zoom link.
Right.
We have people from 7 different countries at this conference. I mean, this is phenomenal what we're able to do. It's like the argument of when do we go back to campus and the arguments right now going on with that. And, again, I talk to my boss a lot, like with an HR hat sometimes, okay, this return to work thing, like, what are we going to do? Are you going to be flexible? Are you going to require people to go in 5 days a week? What are we going to do about morale? Like, there's these conversations that are going on globally right now in every industry about, okay, practitioners have proven that they can do their jobs well online. You're going to have them come back to the office. What are you going to do to prepare them? And I think we're going to see the need for lots of mentoring going on there, of getting people back to what we call the new normal.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry. I think we're about at time, Gavin. This has been a great conversation. I just, Gavin, we will share Gavin's slides and presentation. You can reach out to Gavin. I want to personally say Gavin's been a great mentor for me since I joined NACADA. And, I always will message Gavin for stuff and understand things. And he's a great person to get resources. So we're very lucky to have you here today and just kind of share your experiences with us, Gavin. Thank you so much. And you're right. I think mentorship and having a buddy or a friend along for this really crazy ride is going to make all the difference. So thank you very much. And thank you all for joining. We have our next session at 11 and we'll see you there. It's called Connecting to Basic Needs. And again, it is from Temple University. It's based on the Hope survey. Lots of thank yous coming in to you as well, Gavin. So awesome session. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.